here we have a GI specimen being a segment of large bowel, and we know this based on a couple of features that distinguish large bowel from small bowel. In the large bowel, we do have a Taenia coli, which in this case is cut through and difficult to see based on the pathology that is obscuring the specimen. The caliber of the large versus small bowel is also different, with the large bowel being larger, but we don't have anything to compare it to in this case. Also, there's differences in the appearance of the mucosa in the small and large bowel. So in the large bowel, we do see non-circumferential folding, as well as a more smooth mucosa rather than the granular appearance in the small bowel.
Okay, do you want to just go over that? One of the poll questions was asking, where is Taenia coli not located in the bowel?
Sure. So the Taenia coli sort of stops around the sigmoid region and fades into the normal serosa. So if you said rectum, then you are correct, because there is no Taenia coli present in the rectum.
All right, so we've identified that this is a segment of large bowel. What can you discern of the pathology in terms of what's probably happening and perhaps the reason to why this segment was taken out?
Sure. So when I start my growth, I like to look at the outside first and work my way in. So looking at the outside, it's kind of dusky appearance. We don't see that normal bright yellow pericolic adipose tissue. The epiploic appendages are also a little bit distorted. We can look at the serosalized surface, and it is kind of ragged with these fibrous adhesions. So that hints that there could be something going on the inside. So when we look at the mucosa, you can see these really deep folds present in this segment of bowel. So when you start to see these deep indentations, the first thing you should do is get your probe. So that's what I did. So you can kind of probe into these areas, and that's when you start to think about diverticulitis. So as you continue to probe, in this case, it is a nice example of a perforation in the bowel wall.
Okay, so that's what you think is happening here? Why this was taken out?
Yes.
Sorry, what's the answer?
Oh, the answer I'm going to give is that it is a perforated diverticulitis. So in the presence of all of these diverticula that have not perforated through, we do have this kind of large, inflamed, angry-looking perforated diverticula over here.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to proceed with the next poll question. So the question is, what are the gross anatomical signs of a bowel perforation? So good for everyone. This is pretty straightforward, I think. All of the above. These are gross anatomical signs of a perforation, and most of those features were mentioned by Amy, so maybe for the necrosis part, but yeah, so that's what you can see. So Amy, how would you gross this specimen based on what you believe is happening here?
Sure. So the primary pathology that we're seeing here is this perforation, which can lead to a number of complications, including peritonitis. So when you want to gross this, you want to make sure to show the pathologist the area that is perforated through. So before you gross, you want to ink a rim of ink over here, just to show the normal mucosa entering into that perforation site adjacent to the congested and ragged serosa. So that's what I would do first. To show this perforation site, I would take a scalpel blade and cut directly along to get a nice bisected section to show that perforation site, showing mucosa leading through that defect. I would also want to show other diverticula present to show that it is a multifocal sort of disease. That would show representative of the others, and obviously keep looking for other perforation sites because it is such a ragged looking specimen. There could be other fistula tracts or transmural defects in this case. You also want to talk about your margins. So when I gross a specimen, I will say there are multiple diverticula present throughout the specimen, with the closest being blank centimeters from the proximal margin and blank centimeters from the distal end margin. At this institution, we give our margins en face, our longitudinal margins en face, and then other sections I would want to take would include normal mucosa. So it looks like we might have a little bit of distal normal mucosa down here as we cut through, and then I would submit that. You also want to do a lymph node search because you have so much pericolic fat, you want to see what's going on in the lymph node.
I think that's pretty straightforward. So on review of the history, this was indeed a perforated diverticulitis. So yay, that's good, that's amazing. Let me just pose a scenario for you. What if on search of history, there was a history of high-grade dysplasia of a polyp? How would that change how you gross things?
Absolutely. So when you're going through your history prior to grossing any specimen, you want to look for things like evidence of previous polypectomies and high-grade dysplasia. So if you find that there is something going on, you want to be looking at the mucosa and serosa for an area of tattooing or a previous polypectomy site. If there's an area that looks a little bit scarred or fibrotic, that could be where they removed that polyp. In that case, if you were able to find it grossly, I would submit that area entirely so the pathologist can assess for residual disease or any evidence of malignancy in that area. In my gross description, I would also want to include distances from that area to both end margins.
So, in this case, you're not seeing anything.
So if I didn't see anything grossly and there was no tattooing to indicate where that previous polypectomy site was, then I would go back to the history and correlate and hope that there is a measurement given as to where I could find that lesion. If not, that would be a great time to consult the pathologist so then they can have a look as well to have a second set of eyes to see if they can identify anything suspicious.
Sounds good. I think that's pretty straightforward, and I would agree with all those assessments. Thank you for the specimens. Again, that's perforated bowel due to